Fire burn ye, Lucifer. Fire burn ye, Lucifer. Oh. Israel vibrations. Good morning. This is Bro Diallo Show, broadcasting remotely to Q4 Radio, Q4.org, TuneIn app. I am broadcasting from the quarantine city, the pandemic central station, city of Chiraq, state of Illinois, in the United States of America. And since I've been away for a while, I start every show with asserting that I'm broadcasting straight out of the city of Chiraq. And I don't know how often I have to say this, or if I even have to say this anymore. But the reason I say Chiraq, did I say everything I'm supposed to say? Did I say Q4? Okay, I think I said everything I'm supposed to say. I digress. First of all, music. This morning we started off with Israel Vibration, Be Careful, one of my favorite Roots songs. Living in Babylon, you have to be careful. Living in a Babylon. And followed that up with Jah is the Way. And of course, our D-Nice intro music. Long before quarantine, D-Nice blew up during the quarantine. But y'all know I was bumping the D-Nice intro music 4-5 years before that ever happened. So don't think I'm jumping on no bandwagons. But even, I ain't even coming down on jumping on bandwagons because they look fun. And I wish I could join. Ain't nothing better than jumping on bandwagons and just riding along with the masses of the people. I wish I could do it more often, but when I can, I do. So let me not hate on bandwagons. But what was I talking about? Oh, the reason I say City of Chiraq, and you'll find a lot of people from Chicago that don't like that term, that say, this is Chi-Town, South Side, and we don't want to represent Chiraq because that highlights the violence in the city, and people feel it doesn't really fully represent what Chicago is or what Chicago means to the African people who live here. But I think it does. And I think if you are Black and from Chicago or live in Chicago and you don't like Chiraq, I think you are misinterpreting what it means to call Chicago Chiraq. I think it's one of the most accurate nicknames for a city because Chiraq, first of all, Iraq is one of the cradle civilization societies, the original Babylon, the Fertile Crescent, a place where everything from mathematics to written languages to agriculture were developed in the so-called old world, or pre-European ravaged, pre-Islamic colonial times, in the times of human antiquity. So it was a place that demonstrated that it had great potential and great power and a great center of human culture until a bunch of white fanatics came there and greatly disrupted their society. And it is a place where people are colonized, people have all of their resources stripped away and denied to them, where their leaders are unjustly or illegally assassinated or controlled. When you really look at when Iraq came into the consciousness of the average American, really during the Bush administration, and not George W., but the first Bush, Daddy Bush, it is so appropriate for us to acknowledge that we are a community under siege, under colonial imperialist aggressions, just like there are nations under colonial imperialist aggression. And if understanding that the overlaps between the United States aggression in black communities or against aggression against black people, its own black citizens versus its actions in Afghanistan, Iraq, the Congo, Haiti. Um, I think that will inform our actions better, as opposed to thinking that we are just citizens of America that don't get our fair shake, as opposed to subjects of the Western capitalist, racist white empire. I think that will inform us. So that's why I still say Chiraq, even though the term has kind of, it was always opposed by a lot of good brothers and sisters here. And I respect why you don't say it, but I expect you to at least understand while I still say it and think it's appropriate. And I've kind of laid that out when I first would do my show intro and say that I was broadcasting out of the city of Chiraq, state of Illinois, in the United States of America. But sometimes I feel like for the new listeners or for people who like to have selective amnesia, which seems to be a lot, I have to go back and lay that out, just so we understand each other, even if we don't fully agree with one another. Okay, but moving on. Biden, well, hell, let me say, I could say Biden won the election, but that's not saying much in the United States because Hillary actually won the election. She beat Donald Trump by over 3 million votes. John Kerry won the election. Al Gore won the presidential election. So in the United States, the greatest democracy in the world, God's own personal country, winning an election in American democracy does not mean, or getting majority of the votes in a US democracy does not mean you will take the White House. So all the people who've been doing that like Atlanta ain't in America. So anyway, because you live in the best promoted but worst executed democracy in the world, in the history of democracy, I'm saying don't count your eggs before you hatch. I was going to play the Holy Ghost music because the Holy Ghost music isn't just for me. It's for the people. So if the people are feeling the spirit, then I got to acknowledge that. But like I said, this is the United States of America, and winning an election doesn't, in the greatest democracy in the white world, does not mean you will take the seat. But I'm gonna go ahead and give y'all a little taste of the Holy Ghost music because I'm just let the people have this, just a taste, because we don't know. This Holy Ghost is not for Biden becoming president until what, July 20th? And again, I didn't vote for Biden. I don't endorse Biden. I don't support Biden, but I support my people. And if my people are having a good time, even if it's on some BS, who am I? Who am I to rain on the hood's parade? So here's a little taste. Look. That's it. That's it, man. That's it. That's all y'all get now. When he takes the oath of office, all y'all black folks, I'll give y'all a more extended Holy Ghost rendition. But like I said, that's just for him getting the majority of the votes. But getting the majority of the votes, how white folks, that's how you notice white folks terminology and definition and application don't always line up. They tell us America's free. They tell us it's a post-racial society, life, liberty, and all that stuff. They tell us that the Republicans are conservatives. And every time the Republican convention comes to town, all these prostitutes show up because they know it's a payday. Every time you look, they tell us it's the Christian Conservative Party, and they elect a man with 3 baby mamas and no moral foundation as their hero. 85% of white evangelicals. They tell us it's a democracy, and we know we ain't a part of this. We knew we weren't even considered human, let alone citizens, when they defined what their democracy was. But they don't even amongst themselves in the all-white huddle. They don't do democracy. So they call it one thing and they do another. But that's that. That's it. Now, I did get a question before we go on to the topic. I want to talk about a couple of things before we go to the main topic. Number one is, someone asked me, well, if black people who voted for Biden are coons, which, no, I'm sorry. If black people who voted for Trump are considered coons, which I myself have called black Trump supporters coons, and I've called Ice Cube Ice Coon because of him playing footsies with it. And a lot of y'all are being hypocritical, because I remember when Steve Harvey went and talked to Trump, we all agreed that Steve Harvey was a coon for that. And when Kanye West was giving Trump lap dances in the Oval Office with the MAGA hat on, we all agreed, the black community, the black delegation, all said he's a coon. And even Lil Wayne, Johnny Come Lately, stepped in and jumped became one of Trump's African Americans. Look at my African American over there. We said he was a coon, but for some reason, when Ice Cube didn't even meet with the man. Ice Cube didn't even get an audience with Trump. He met with Trump's underlings. He met with Trump's staff. He met with the man who spray tans Trump's, whose job it is to keep up with Trump's spray tan. He met the dude who does Trump's comb over every morning. He met with the low-level officials. He didn't even meet with the main man. But then y'all got mad at me when I'm like, oh, another coon, right? High five. Nope. Y'all were like, no. How dare you call Ice Cube a coon? I'm like, I thought this was what the hood was doing. So y'all inconsistent, and y'all confused me. Ice Cube's not a coon, apparently. But everybody else who met with Trump prior to that, and even after that, we all agreed were coons. But I guess, man, y'all still, a lot of brothers my age and older, y'all still think y'all still trying to get put on? Is that it? You 48-year-old dudes with grandkids, unpaid child support, all y'all think y'all still gonna get put on? Or y'all still sending mixtapes? And when I say mixtapes, I mean literal cassette tapes. Are y'all still mailing them things to Ice Cube? And y'all don't want to, maybe you still think Ice Cube might pop in your tape and make you a member of the lynch mob? He might sign you up for West Side Connection, bring you up on stage and let you bust a hot freestyle at his next concert. What do y'all think? Why y'all scared of Cube? To treat Cube like we should? Why does he get special status? But anyway, that's the whole reason I'm doing this show, If I Rule the World. Because whenever I called out Cube, people would be like, what you doing? But I'll get into that later. But I mean, you got to check yourself. Y'all either call Ice Cube a coon, or y'all get on the phone and apologize to Steve Harvey. What's that other football player that got the nerve to go meet with Trump with a damn African kufi on? Is it Jim Brown? Who is that dude? But I mean, yeah, Jim Brown. Oh, he was born a coon. He got coon DNA. Look at him. The mustache. I mean, he's a poor, bless his heart, old Jim Brown. I don't even know if he knew where he was. He thought he was on his way to Peach's restaurant to get some fried eggs and pork chops. He didn't know he was going to meet the president. He ain't even all there physically or mentally. So, but we'll pass on Jim Brown. Jim Brown's still a coon, but not for meeting with Trump. I'm pretty sure he thought he was going to Aunt Peach's Southern soul food delicatessen. He didn't know he was going to the Oval Office. It's all the same. He don't know where he is or where he's going. But he was a coon because remember what he said. He took the wrong position on several other, but I'll give him a pass. But all them other dudes, y'all need to call Steve Harvey. Y'all need to call Kanye and apologize to them, or allow me to freely, I ain't even saying you got to call. If you a groupie, a middle-aged male groupie for Ice Cube, you know, you still getting up, annoying, waking up your grandkids, blasting NWA straight out of Compton every morning. You know, if you still a middle-aged man and you get in your car and you lean the seat all the way back, if you still a middle-aged man, my age, you got a salt and pepper beard, and you walking down the street in baggy sagging jeans with fancy embroidered pockets. If you still got a gun you ain't shot in the last 35 years, but you keep it on you, you stay strapped on your way to Sam's Club. You get your Bengay and your heating pad. If you still that dude, I ain't saying you gotta call Cube a coon. If you love him that much, if his raps have inspired you so much, then bless your heart. But at least let me call him a coon in peace. Like I let y'all call Kanye a coon in peace for doing the exact same thing. Come on, man, as Obama says. That's all I'm asking. That's all I request. And another thing, Cube is a hoe. I'm going to call him a hoe and a coon. And let me tell you why. I grew up listening to Ice Cube. I'm not a groupie because they told me when I was, 12, 13 years old, NWA said they hate male groupies. They like female groupies. They don't like male groupies. So I'm like, I'm a fan. I ain't going to be a groupie. But back in those days, he made a song called I Ain't the One. The one who gets played like a poop butt. See, I'm from the street, so I know what's up. On these silly games that's played by the women, I'm only happy when I'm going up in them. The song I Ain't the One, go Google it. It's on YouTube for free. It's a whole song where Ice Cube details how women come to him because he's famous, because he has status. And they'll get you for your money, son. Next thing you know, you're getting your hair and the nails done for them. They'll let you show them off. But when it comes to sex, they got a bad cough or a headache. It's all give and no take. Run out of money and watch your heart break. They'll drop you like a bad habit because a brother with money, yo, they got to have it. But messing with Ice Cube, you gets none. Because I ain't the one. Something like that. Now, he made a detailed song with like 3 verses talking about how women, black women, because if you listen to, there's a woman in there begging, Ice Cube, can I have some money? Can you get my hair and my nails done, Ice Cube? Give me money, please. He's literally got a woman on that track begging between his verses, begging him for money and other services. And at the end of the song, he says to that black woman, I got what I wanted, beat it. So then, you know, a song called, the whole song is about somebody that he sees as beneath him, coming to him, talking about, give me these things. And it's an appeal to give me something, but Ice Cube's like, I'm bigger, I'm stronger, and there's no consequences for failing to meet what your expectations. So I'll promise you everything that you want. I'll get everything I want from you, give you nothing, and then disregard and dismiss you, and there will be no consequences for me because you can't choose Ice Cube because I ain't the one. Now tell me that if that don't describe Ice Cube's relationship with Trump and the Trump administration, what does? So by Ice Cube's own definition, to beg somebody for money, go read the plan, go read the outline of the Cube's contract with Black America. It's begging. Oh, Trump, can I have some money, please? Trump, can you get my nails done? I need my hair done too. You know, he's making a request of Trump. And Trump was like, hey, yeah, let me put your name on this. I'm falling behind in the polls. I'm doing bad. And you notice Trump got more black male votes this time around than he did the previous election. And was that because of Ice Cube? Was that all the middle-aged male groupies? Did Ice Cube, Kanye, Lil Wayne make it cool for black men to rock with Trump, at least cooler than it was 4 years ago? I ain't looked at the stats and the demographics. Ask your uncle. Ask your MAGA uncle. Did Ice Cube make it gangster to be a far right-wing fascist? Now I'm literally sipping tea. So anyway, he got played like a poop butt. Because he, at least with some intelligent, self-respecting black folks, he's lost some credibility. His name started ringing in these streets. He got a lot of negative pushback, and you don't take my word for it. I know you think Cube is a god for some reason I can't fathom, but he's even on Twitter and he's on the internet like, oh, everybody's attacking me. So you put yourself in a position to get attacked by behaving, because I get attacked too. Not like Ice Cube, I'm not famous and rich, but I take positions where I get attacked on. But I promise you, the positions, the things I get attacked for, I proudly stand on. I'll take all y'all jabs and all y'all condemnations with full of pride, because I ain't gonna do nothing that I can't stand on. I'm not gonna behave in such a way that I have to constantly be explaining and re-explaining and redefining my motives and my actions. So you might be like, people might say, you know, one thing, people jump on me for advocating for vegan, being a vegan, and they tell me vegan ain't African, or they got all these reasons not to eat dead animal carcasses and consume animal excretions. And people could be like, well, that's Eurocentric, or I'm an atheist. Oh, that's Eurocentric. I'm like, fine, I'm gonna stand on that square. You can throw all the jabs you want, intellectual jabs you want, and all the criticism, but I'm proud to be here. You know, he had Trump's sons out tweeting memes about him and stuff. He was a tool. He got played like a hoe, a tool, a pawn and a puppet, sitting in his room, sitting up in his room. What's that song? Like Brandy, sitting up in my room, begging Trump for money. But I guess Q would be like, well, I wasn't begging for money on my behalf because I ain't the hoe. I was begging for money on Trump's, on the black community's behalf. So y'all, I guess he trying to pimp us out. Like, I got this fine, sexy black community out in my car. You know, you break us off, I can have her come in here and work with you, do some things, throw some votes your way. I don't know how the conversation went, because Cube didn't even get to meet with the big man. Cube didn't even get the cameras and everything that Kanye got. Remember, Kanye was sitting up there in front of Trump talking about iPhone planes and said that Trump should have the flyers closed because he's the president. Cube didn't even get that treatment. Cube didn't even get that. Lord have his mercy. But I didn't went on that too long. Somebody said to me, "You how you call Trump supporters, black Trump supporters coons, but black Democrats aren't coons?" And there's a few reasons. Number one, 90% of the black community, over 90% of the black community, if you put black women and men together, if you put just black men, over 80% of black women, men, and over 90% of black women, but that come together, that pushes us in the 90 percentiles, because black women outnumber black men. So when the masses of your people are moving in any direction, I don't even care if it's going the wrong way, or if the masses of your people are like, yo, this is, you know, where we gonna stand on this, and you are over there in the opposition, first you got to check it. You got to get in the corner. And I ain't saying follow the masses, but that should give you pause. And I know, because somebody who frequently goes the opposite direction of the masses, before I do that, I must fall back and say, wow, man, everybody's saying they side with Biden, but I'm thinking Trump is a better direction, or somebody we should be rocking with. I ain't saying you always got to go with the masses, but by the time you about to go so strongly against the tide, you better have some very, very, very good reasoning. Be able to really lay it out why you are going to be the outlier in such an overwhelming tide. And if you got a good reason, then you are what they call a member of the vanguard. You are a radical. You are a visionary. But if the masses of the community say, hey, we're not going to jump into the damn septic tank, and you were like, oh, everybody wanted to talk about they don't want to be in the septic tank, I'm going to proudly jump in the septic tank, then you are not a visionary. You are a coon. You are an idiot. And so it's all about the rationale, the outcome, the analysis. I've always asserted that if you're anti-Biden, you have to be anti-Biden from the left of Biden, ideologically, which means you have to assert that Biden's not progressive, liberal, anti-racist, anti-police. You have to go to the right of Biden, to the far left of Biden. If you are on the left and say Biden's not progressive, liberal, democratic, anti-racist, he's a racist. If you're criticizing or critiquing Biden from the left, then I can rock with you because that's where I am. But if you go to the right of Biden, then you are a coon. I don't know why this is so hard to figure out. If you go to the right of Biden and you end up with Trump, because Trump is an intensification of Biden. Trump is an unrefinement of Biden. That's all. It's that simple. That's why you're a coon. Because you go, the black community, I would tell the black community, it is a miscalculation for us to support the Democratic Party and Joe Biden. It is a miscalculation. I would call it that. To support Trump, it is an act of treason. Because I'm a realist, I'm a materialist. So I look at the facts on the ground, and even when I develop ideological or even visionary forward thinking, beyond the outside the box thinking, I always stay rooted in what's real and people's material reality. Because ideologies and beliefs and even strong convictions don't put food on the table. So I don't think we should limit it to say just put food on the table, because we are self-aware beings and we do have higher needs: food, clothing, shelter, interpersonal contact and relationships. But there's also ideologies, philosophies, desires, visions, and dreams. So I think there should be some balance and interplay between concrete material of what is and what can be or what we wish to be. So I'm not all locked in, oh, this is all best we can do. I don't think this is the best we can do, but this is the most practical or achievable in this climate or this time frame or at this juncture in time. You know how we do. So I don't condemn the black community for pragmatism. I don't condemn. I condemn the black community for settling for the options that the system makes available to us, but I don't condemn the community for doing what I call, when I say when black people vote, and then y'all get tired of me saying this, after this whole election cycle is done, we don't have to talk about politics like this until the midterm. But there's two sides to black people voting. Number one, when black people engage the US political system of their oppressor, they should be, say it with me, cold, distant, and calculating. And we should have three objectives when we vote. Number one, resource extraction. We vote for the structure that will bring the most benefit to our community and extract the least. Number one, resource extraction. Get more out than we put in. Number two, harm reduction. Harm elimination is the ultimate goal, We want to end harm, end aggression, end racism, end the systems and institutions of global white domination. But as we are still subject to them, oppressed by them, if there are pockets of harm reduction, prison reform, food stamps, Medicaid, housing vouchers, things of that nature that we can come to do some of the harm reduction, then that's what we vote for. Resource extraction, harm reduction, and finally, status quo disruption, which is a little more sophisticated, requires a little bit more strategy and planning to disrupt the status quo. Sometimes disrupting the status quo means voting for third-party candidates. Sometimes it means even en masse withholding our support from one party, or even switching party allegiances, or even running upstart or protest candidates like Run Jesse Run. It could take many forms. But ultimately, we want to demonstrate to our community the illegitimacy of the system and its control over us. So those are things that happen. And prior to, during, and after any election cycle, there should be a concrete Black agenda that operates independent of the dominant white status quo, irregardless. Meaning the Black community should have had a Trump re-election plan of action. We should have had a Biden election plan of action, and Biden versus Trump civil war and Trump refused. We should have various plans of action developed, because our ultimate goal must advance independent. So if I was to apply the code distant calculating, resource extraction, harm reduction, status quo disruption objectives of Black people participating in a white democracy under racism, under distress, involuntarily being subjected to these people's systems, all that put together, I would say that the most intelligent choice for Black people in this election cycle, the absolute optimum choice, was to vote third party, which would push all of those objectives forward. Barring voting third party, then it's middle ground. Because I know my community, even though I do everything in my power every day to radicalize my community is not yet radicalized. That's what we're going to talk about today. So if you vote for Biden, I disagree with you. I think you were wrong, but I don't think you're a coon. I think you're engaged in pragmatism, but often generations of pragmatism, sometimes they say, the pragmatic thing sometimes can be, the stagnant thing to do. But if you voted for Trump, there is no justification. You can sit and give me an argument. I don't agree with the arguments for supporting Biden, but I can accept them and I understand them and I can sympathize with them. I can't accept, understand, or sympathize with anybody working with, coordinating with, or submitting contracts for review, whole ass Q. I can't rock with that. There's no justification for that because resource extraction ain't happening. It ain't happening. Trump, then here's, I ain't gonna get into it. I'm going to do a formal debate. There's this debate society that has asked me to come and debate the Ice Cube. So I'll share that, or y'all can check that out. I'm sick of talking about that lynch mob. How you a Black man and you form a record label and you call it Lynch Mob Record Label, and then you create a logo with people holding nooses and pitchforks and torches, and he spelled lynch. How did he spell lynch mob? He spelled lynch different. CEQ. LE instead of LY. He formed a rap group called the Lynch Mob, and he had Lynch Mob Records. And Ice Cube constantly, at the same time he was running around with the Nation of Islam, he was doing St. Ives malt liquor commercial. And he had a line, St. Ives malt liquor make your Jimmy get thicker. So Ice Cube has never been consistent, but for some reason, I mean, I talk to people, I'm like, I don't know what dimension I'm living in where this Ice Cube was ever a revolutionary. Even with NWA, they told that damn lie, and then black people started repeating the lie. Oh, NWA was doing gangster raps because they wanted the world to know how we was living in the hood. Wasn't nobody paying attention to the ghetto, so we had to bring the voice of the ghetto to the people. First of all, dumbasses. People who believe that bull. Black people living in the ghetto, we know what the ghetto is. So we don't need Ice Cube, who came from a middle-class two-parent family. Eazy-E, who before he became a gangster rapper was waiting tables at his family black-owned restaurant. Dr. Dre, the musicologist who was with World Class Wrecking Crew, making crooning R&B tunes for the ladies before he decided to play gangster. You know, we didn't need these middle-class blacks to tell us how things were in the hood, in the projects. We whose parents were addicted to drugs, whose fathers were mass incarcerated, whose brothers was banging and dying young. So we didn't need them to tell us. And as far as white people created the ghettos. Black people did not create ghettos. White people, the elites, create, construct, define the parameters, the infrastructure, set it up. The oppressors create ghettos, not the oppressed. So you can't tell white folks is like, I made the ghetto. You ain't telling me what's happening in the ghetto. Who do you think manufactures the guns in the ghetto? Who do you think shipped the crack? Who shipped the coke from Colombia to the ghetto? So who the hell were they telling it like it was? The people who were subjected to the conditions or the people who create and sustain the conditions? That's a GD lie. NWA, they created gangster rap to subvert revolutionary hip hop. And Ice Cube could have told the truth. He's like, you know, he's been making rap dollars since he'd been rapping since he was in the 10th grade. So he could have came and was like, listen, we didn't make this music. And even F the Police. Back then, there were dozens of anti-police songs made by revolutionary artists. But F the Police is like literally a song of them complaining that the police is interfering with their ability to commit crimes and engage in antisocial behavior against black people. Eazy-E literally said he was mad at the police because when he takes out his Uzi or his AK, and when he pulls the trigger on a stupid ass nigga, he was mad that the police were interfering with him shooting other black people. Like, how dare you? All I'm doing is minding my business with my Uzi and my AK, shooting other black people, and here come the police interfering with what I want to do in the hood. So it was not really a progressive song. It was an extremely reactionary song. People know the chorus, but do you listen to the lyrics? You could go listen. Now listen to F the Police and another song that was out at that time, Bo, Bo, Bo. Bo, 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 clack, 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 clack. Get your street knowledge, every posse know that. Come again. Bo, 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 clack, 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 clack. The only way to deal with racism if you're black. This is a song that about a black man that was doing positive in his community. And the police wanted to interfere with him doing good things in the community. He said he was in his community fighting against stereotypes and the dehumanizing conditions. And so the police attempted to assassinate him. So he fought back against the police. He threw a grenade at the police. He was shooting out with the police, not shooting other black people. Because I blast on a stupid ass nigga when I'm playing with the trigger or an Uzi or an AK. That's what they said in F the Police. And so he escaped. And he said, you know, the black women were there. He was in that song. He talked about how black women were also subjected to brutality and how black women were his allies in fighting against the system, not hoes that all want money for their nails and hairs. So there were songs, there were plenty of positive songs, anti-police anthems, even before F the Police, but we think F the Police was the original and there were blues. Go listen to Gil Scott-Heron, No Knock. There were anti-police, anti-FBI, anti-state repression songs before F the Police. But we all got that burned in our memory. That's not an accident because the white media corporate propaganda. If I was a cop, I would consider that to be a pro-police song. Because, I mean, you listen to F the Police and they be like, yeah, that's the state of the community when the police are not able to engage. That's basically what it says. So anyway, I shouldn't have got started. Let's move on. So no, I know some of you super militants. Voting for Trump and voting for Biden is not the same thing, even though you're doing it within the same system. And I know, well, I mean, I wish that the Black community was radicalized to the point where we can define a vote for someone like Biden against Trump as a treasonous act, but we're not radicalized. We didn't do our work well enough to radicalize our community's politics. Our community's politics are still mostly reactionary, pragmatic, and integrationist. We have to change that, but you can't change conditions that you don't acknowledge. You have to acknowledge, comprehend, understand before you can implement change. But so no, I think it's a stretch. Moving on. COVID-19, let me just speak on that. 10 million cases of COVID-19, 238,000 deaths. I know two people personally, fortunately, it's not family members, but unfortunately, there have been a couple of people that I know personally who have contracted. And, I know, shoot, I think I know about at least 6 people from around the nation, not just in Chicago, that have contracted. And I know 2 people who have passed away from the COVID-19 pandemic. And I still got brothers on my feed talking about don't wear a mask, it compromises your freedom. People aren't social distancing. I got relatives who, from my judgmental perch, I feel that are taking unnecessary risks and not implementing proper precautions. But this COVID thing is real, and we are literally in the midst of a worst case scenario. That's why I'm sitting up in my family room broadcasting to Q4 Radio, q4.org. Go to the TuneIn app, listen from anywhere in the world. But there are 10 million cases. Wow. In the US, 238,000 deaths. And I'm sure, I was looking these numbers up last night. I'm pretty sure that it's gone up from there just in the time we all slept. But here's another thing. At one point, I think it was back in March, COVID was the leading cause of daily deaths in the United States. Right now, it is level, I wouldn't say level off because it's still peaking, but COVID-19 is the 3rd leading cause of mortality in the United States after heart disease and cancer. It is real. You can protect yourself by social distancing, limiting your interactions with other people who live outside of your household. When you're out wearing a cotton mask, at the least, the most basically a cotton mask, not to stop the virus from leaving. You're not trying to prevent the virus from leaving your mouth. Viruses don't just exist free, like unless you have weaponized the virus. But by and large, COVID-19 and most other viruses need a host or a vector or some type of medium to be transmitted. That means the medium is often mucus or saliva or blood or semen or vaginal excretions, viruses need generally some type of medium. Viruses aren't like a mosquito itself, that the mosquito, it just flies around until it finds you and then lands on you. Viruses generally are transported through a medium. So no, your mask cannot stop viruses. They are too small. But your mask can stop mucus from your nose and sputum and saliva from your mouth from going into the air, the particulates. It reduces the level, right? And it's a precautionary, it's not a cure. That's why you have to combine that with social distancing. You have to combine that with limiting the number of people by increasing the ventilation and, you know, other things, your health, your overall health, diet, exercise. But it is a precaution. And it kind of frustrates me that people that, if it's not a cure, then you can't take precautions. That's the people who don't vote. If I can't vote for freedom, if the white man says on this ballot in the next election, there'll be a box, slavery, freedom, and you get to vote for your freedom. And a lot of people say they won't vote until the white man puts freedom on the ballot. Should I give up my billions of dollars and control of the world, or should I sustain my billions and trillions of dollars and control of the world? I'm gonna say, give it up. Oh, you think voting's going to free you? No, I didn't vote for freedom. I voted for them to regulate car exhaust. I voted for them to give children free broadband access in their schools or whatever. That's all I voted for. Freedom, that's over here. I work for freedom over here. I vote for, you know, concessions from the government over here. And I can do both without compromising either. But I digress. So you take these precautionary measures. You know, you should challenge people spreading misinformation about how the virus is transmitted and the risk that the virus poses. And living here on the South Side in the hood, when the over 70 to 80% of the people who die are Black people, and to see that my community is not behaving in such a way that would tell me that we take this seriously. I see us out here at the ball court where I used to go play basketball. 2 blocks from here, I ain't been to that ball court not once in 2020. And I walk by, and sometimes I even think, well, I wish I could take my boys and we could go shoot around, go play a game. But I see all these other people there. And I know those 45 young brothers don't all live together. So, and it's gonna get worse before it gets better, because the number one driver of this pandemic is the capitalist economy and the capitalist culture, or the capitalist mentality. That is the reason why the virus is so bad here. It's because of capitalism. The nations that do best with this virus, with controlling the spread and mitigating the harm that this virus does to people and the system, the more capitalist the society, the worse it's going to do, because this virus literally feeds off of the culture and the economy of the United States. And let me tell you how, because death rates, the United States hasn't seen this daily and weekly death rate since 1950. In 1950, what happened? 1950 was the first era where the United States really started to benefit from socialist policies. And prior to that, there was no such thing as public health. The United States in 1950. Now, the New Deal was implemented as far back as 1940, but it took over a decade, really, for the New Deal benefits to permeate the culture and to fully be implemented. That's why, you know, everybody is happy that Trump's gone. Like right now in the United States, we're still feeling the shockwaves and after effects of Obama's policies. That's the thing, Obama, when he was first elected and everybody was like, you got to fix everything Bush did. And Obama said the United States political climate and the United States economy is like an oil tanker. So if you feel your society's going, the United States is going in the wrong direction, it takes a lot of effort and even more time to switch directions. And you ever see an oil tanker in real life or an aircraft carrier? I've been aboard an aircraft carrier. They have an aircraft carrier that they turned into a museum in New York City on the West Side Highway, and you can get up there. They let you walk through one of the United States death machines, omnicide death machine. But in order to turn this thing around, it takes a coordinated effort and a long time. He said that's how it is. It takes a long time. So we're still living in the aftermath of Obama's policies. The damage that Trump has done, from his judicial appointments to his upending environmental policies and limiting the amount of mercury and cadmium and lead that can be emitted into the water and to the air, it's going to be another generation before those all fully hit us, let alone before we get on the other side of that. So, almost a decade after, the United States founded the Department of Health, and they actually started reducing daily death tolls and started lowering the mortality rate. Up until the late 1930s, the United States was a third world country. All these things, Social Security, social safety net, unemployment, unions, and homeowner, high levels of home ownership, a large middle class, that was, it wasn't due to white folks' hard work and because white folks had traditional families and strong values. White folks became the middle class society, the middle class of the United States, through welfare programs, government handouts, right? GI bills. The government constructed the white middle class. White individuals didn't work hard and pull themselves up by the bootstraps to create the middle class. And another thing that is associated with middle class is an extended lifespan and a reduction of infectious disease. And so the United States, up until 1950, between 1939, if you're going to try to do it hard, between 1939 up until 1982, the United States was essentially a social democracy. The United States had strong socialist policies, social democratic policies that created a large middle class, extended the lifespan of America, reduced the average American's exposure to toxic food, toxic water, toxic air, and toxic products and home goods. As the nation became more receptive to socialist policy initially implemented by FDR and the New Deal program, and then reinforced by programs like the War on Poverty, the Great Society. And I know Black people probably listen, they changed nothing. Yes, this is white folks amongst white folks. Black people, we were on the trickle down. Some of those benefits would trickle down to us, but for every dollar the average white person got, Black people would get 15 cents or less in terms of government support and infrastructure. Now, Professor Mackey said it was between, in some, depending on where you lived and what the program was, we'd sometimes, for every dollar a white family or white individual got, the government would kick down 25 cents. And for under some programs, under Jim Crow, for every dollar white folks got, they took 50 cents from Black folks. So I understand when I talk like this, a lot of Black people just want to shut down mentally because they're like, screw this. But we's here. So we were a part of this, but it wasn't for us. But we should understand, because if these are our oppressors, then you gotta, as Dick Gregory said before he passed, you better study white folks. White folks study the hell out of us. You go and get a degree in anthropology, in social science, in psychology, and watch how intensely they study Black folks. But Black folks try to act like, if it ain't Black, then I don't want to pay no attention to it. That's a fatal mistake. But I digress. So, and just like when they implemented the socialist reform, it took almost two, and I'm gonna make this relevant to COVID. Bear with me, and then we're gonna go into the topic. It took a decade or more for the socialistic reforms of the United States government to fully do things like uplift the white majority out of mass poverty to a large middle class. And it took to expand and extend the life form and reduce the daily and weekly death tolls in the United States, preventable death tolls, things of that safety measures. And even in the 70s, they were still implementing seatbelt laws and other to help people live longer lives with fewer crippling injuries and infectious diseases. All that began being aggressively dismantled in the 1980, between 1980 and 82, under the Reaganomics of Reagan administration. They started doing away with American socialism. They never called American socialism because Americans hate that word, but they love those policies. I tell you what. So anyway, it took another 20 years or more for the dismantling of the socialist policy of the United States to return the United States to third world country. And now the United States is a third world country. Really, you got to go, United States has gone further than the 1950s. The United States, you got to study the Gilded Age. If you want to understand the United States today, you got to go back to the Woodrow Wilson administration. And you got to look at what is called by political scientists and economists the Gilded Age of America. We are in a new Gilded Age. I made this meme called Make America Gilded Again back when Trump first got elected, but I think that was too obscure of a reference. Nobody got it. But MAGA, I would say that MAGA, Make America Gilded Again. And I think if you look at that hashtag of Make America Gilded Again, you might see some of my writings on that. But like I said, I think it was too obscure of a reference. But I tried, that's nerd humor for you. So the death rate, the United States right now, today in 2020, space age, we got billionaire, parasitic billionaires who are planning out Mars colonies. We are in the future. We're not waiting for the future. We are a part of the future. And at the same time, we got artificial intelligence and microscopic self-reproducing nanobots and all this high-tech mess that I'm able to broadcast to a radio studio from the discomfort of my own home. At that same time, we got 19th century, hell, we even got 18th century pre-industrial poverty and ignorance, functional illiteracy. And the death rate is reflecting that. Because the infrastructure that was created that gave people extended life and better health is being defunded, neglected, privatized. And there is this guy by the name of Dr. Dubos. This guy, he came up with the phrase, think globally, act locally. This guy was a virologist. And when I started thinking about COVID and how it's ravaging my community, and I'll just tell y'all, if you follow me on social media, you'll read my write-up. My grandmother just turned 90 years old. I talked to her a couple of days ago. And, she has, some cognitive issues that come with being 90 and diabetes and some other ailments that are typical for someone blessed, as she would say, to reach the ripe age of 90 and raise me and my siblings and raise up generations of her family and being able to meet her granddaughters and great granddaughters. And she even has met her great great granddaughters. She has met the grandchildren of her grandchildren. It's a blessing, to quote her. And it is, I guess, in certain contexts. But they had a 90 birthday party for her. And of course, I didn't go. And I told my relatives they shouldn't go see her, and had relatives coming from other parts of the country flying in to see her. I felt that was irresponsible, because I said, how you have a black woman who lives through Jim Crow, who lives through Reaganomics, who lived through the Great Depression, but she gonna die because of somebody came and breathed on her being selfish or irresponsible. She's comfortable, she's well, send her your well wishes, but keep your distance. But anyway, so I started looking because this thing ain't gonna be over anytime soon. And so I started looking up Dubois, and like I said, he's the guy who said the first said think globally, act locally. He was a microvirologist, and he came up with the understanding that diseases aren't just biological. He said the diseases are social, physical, and cultural. So you have this virus and bacteria and these other life forms or biological entities. I don't know, what is a virus even? Like, they say it's not a living thing. They're not technically alive. Virus is kind of like a cluster of cells and protein chains. But you have viruses, bacteria, and other infectious substances that come from the natural world. And he said that what makes people vulnerable and susceptible to these diseases is not just their physical vulnerability, their lack of immune system support, but also the social, physical, and cultural environment. And he was one of the first scientists to really tie those things together. You know, that it's not your health and well-being is not an individual condition, that it is tied to your culture, how and if you are infected, your chances of survival, and how well you'll recover is all tied to things outside of just your immune system or your personal or individual vulnerability to that disease. And he said in the 1950s, he was writing when epidemiologists and other health scientists were celebrating that there had been a steep drop in human mortality in the United States and a steep along accompanying increase in the life expectancy. There was a time in the last century, in the 20th century, where the average life expectancy in the United States for certain males under certain conditions was 30s, 38, 40 years old. Appalachia, parts of the deep rural South, because the United States is a very vast, wide country with a very wide range of environments. You know, you have industrial areas, agricultural areas, you have frigid, cold, Mediterranean areas, and subtropical like areas down in Florida, swampy areas. So it's a very diverse country. So in the United States, it's very hard to say, well, when you say all people, so you might have some place in the major cities where people are living into their 60s on average, but then you go to other parts of the country or Indian reservations where the life expectancy for a male could be 38 years old, even now. I think Native Americans, the life expectancy of the average Native Americans, don't quote me on this, I think it's like 46 years old. Let's see. Whatever. Let's see. The life expectancy of Native Americans is 20 years shorter than the average. Man. Lord. But they said the Native Americans were closing the gap. Good for them. I ain't even gonna look up black folks. It's too heartbreaking. Won't be able to finish the show. Anyway, I digress. Of course, the women live longer. You know, the males live almost a decade shorter than the average American, where the women only live about 5.2 years shorter. But moving on. Anyway, he says that health improvements in the United States are due to sanitation and nutrition. The sanitation infrastructure, not just washing your hands, but the sanitation infrastructure, waste disposal, the sewage system, water treatment, things of that, water purification, air scrubbers, and air purifications or limitations on emissions. That's what caused a reduction, because if you are, because it's impossible to fully escape viruses and bacteria. We're all exposed to them every day, you know, in our bodies, on the surface of our skin. We have more DNA from bacteria in our body than we have human DNA, because our body is awash with bacteria. So what prevents you from being able to live symbiotic with the environment versus being attacked or infected by the environment is your background health. So if your mother was properly nourished while you were in her womb, that gives you a good start. And if she lives in a relatively low stress environment, that gives you a start, the epigenetics. And then when you're born, you're fed well as a child, which all of your growth, your bone growth, your organ development, all those things proceed properly, proper health, psychological, psycho-emotional nurturing, all those things go to help make you a more resilient per individual. But what makes a more resilient individual is a nurturing and supportive society. Because if your mother was alone, your mother was able to get diapers, and the farmer grew food for your mother, and the plumber set up the sewage system, and the trash man came and took the trash away, and Aretha Franklin was singing songs to help uplift your mother's attitude and feelings and create, positive and reduce stress hormones and create positive visions or ideas for the future. All these different entities, all these different thousands of unnamed, untouched individuals went to help your mother give birth to a healthy child, or the healthiest child she could. And then all these other supports from school teachers. And again, the school teacher needs all those other supports. And then the Aretha Franklin needs all. And so it's all these cascading, interconnected supports that go about making healthy individuals. And so that if a virus comes, you can endure it as an individual. Or even when they're functioning, it limits the ability for infectious diseases to spread amongst the population because the preventative measures and supports are there. Capitalism destroys all of that. Capitalism promotes individualism, competition, and alienation. Go read Karl Marx. He said it 100 years ago. And Karl Marx didn't even have Google. Karl Marx couldn't go on and read what's happening in capitalist India, capitalist Haiti, capitalist South Africa, capitalist South Korea. He was looking at relatively isolated populations of industrial workers. And he write about everything. Just go read the Communist Manifesto. It's not even a book, it's a pamphlet. And you can hate or love Marx, but you can't argue with his analysis. Yeah, he got some things wrong, but he got way more right. Talk about prophetic. Just with the things he said about alienation under capitalism. You read that and you'll be like, damn, this is what's happening to me. So the reason why COVID is ravaging the United States is because of capitalism. It's not because people in the United States are more vulnerable to this disease than anywhere else, but because the mentality that is bred people, the inability to empathize, the inability to be more concerned about anyone else other than what's immediately yours, the state where people have the mentality that reality is a consumer product. Everything is a commodity and a product. And if I don't like this reality, I can go somewhere else. Whatever you believe about COVID, you can create an environment that supports whatever you want to believe. If I believe COVID is a hoax and is not real at all, it's just a government lie, I can create a bubble for myself, an information bubble that only feeds that. If I want to believe that masks are a conspiracy by reptilian Illuminati overlords to be a prelude to the mark of the beast, if I want to believe that the virus is real, but it was some type of bioweapon from China, whatever I believe about the virus, I can go out and handpick, consume, purchase, and possess, take ownership of whatever truth I want to exist. Now, eventually, if you choose to consume and rock with an untruth as the truth, the material reality is going to eventually catch up with your ass. And when the material reality contradicts your consumer reality or the reality you've constructed for yourself, you end up like Trump with contracting the virus when you didn't have to. But unlike Trump, you don't get a private helicopter, specialists flown in all from the world, and experimental treatments. You don't have the resources Trump has available to him as president of the empire. So even though you want to walk around here without a mask and talk nonsense instead of really respecting and reviewing the reality of the conditions that we're in under this pandemic, you ain't gonna get a private helicopter. You be lucky to get a janky ass ambulance because the government has divested because it didn't want to tax billionaires. It thought it was better to build houses, make mansions for billionaires than to build houses for the masses of the people and build hospitals for the masses of the people. So the U.S. healthcare infrastructure, the U.S. Sanitary infrastructures, the U.S. health departments and other agencies are underfunded, defunded, and allowed to collapse onto themselves because of privatization, medicine and Medicare for profit instead of medicine and Medicare for the health and well-being of the society. This is a capitalist pandemic. Viruses will always be here. But what determined a pandemic when you look at the earliest known, the bubonic plague and European industrialism, the feudal system, all systems of oppression that limit people's ability to move, people's ability to interact with the land. People start to believe in things that the earth, that the natural world is demonic. And there is this mystery divine presence somewhere in the ether, and you start to value the unreal over the real. These type of mentalities and these type of behaviors of human beings creates pandemics. Every pandemic in human history, you find other characteristics: divestment from the infrastructure, and erosion and corruption of human relations, the mass manipulation and herding of people into conditions that are not prime for the human development in order to extract their labor, whether it is a sweatshop factory or the hull of a slave ship or a concentration camp or a Native American reservation. All of these things were created by oppression, racism, and they all have been disease breeding conditions when people are allowed to live freely and interact with each other based on our needs instead of exploiting and extracting and competing with each other. We have less potentials. The conditions for pandemics are reduced. I'm not saying they don't happen, but they are greatly reduced and more infrequently, and so are famines and things of that nature. But imperialism, invasions create plagues. The pursuit of profit creates conditions for pandemics and plagues. This is a capitalist pandemic, y'all. And we in it now. We're past the point of prevention. We're now in the point of coping. We're now at the point of enduring. And it really bothers me to be in the hood seeing y'all take this for a joke. It really bothers me how many people I encounter in the hood and on social media spreading utter nonsense. You can't put on a cloth mask. You can't limit, because there's certain people that don't have the ability to stay home. I have the ability to broadcast my show from home, so I'm going to do that instead of going out here and putting people at risk who don't have that option, who can't do their work from home, who have to go into the streets and expose themselves. We who have the capacity to stay home should stay our asses at home out of respect and consideration for the people who don't have that option. Brothers out here driving trucks to bring goods and services into the community, healthcare workers, thinking about the well-being of others alongside the well-being of yourself. You don't have to neglect yourself to care for others. You can tie it all together. This is serious. We need to stop acting like petty capitalists, only concerned about what we get and what we want when we want it. In order to further reduce, because I think we're in a worst case scenario, but to avoid a worsening case scenario, we are going to have to create a social, physical, cultural environment of cooperation, of empathy. We'll have to start to work to redevelop the health and sanitation infrastructure of our communities. And if the state won't do it, then we have to do it from a grassroots level. But moving on, today's show is called If I Ruled the World. The reason I called it If I Ruled the World is because a lot of Black folks, we've adopted a lot of things from our oppressors. Some of the things we've more enthusiastically adopted than others. But one of the things we adopted was Christianity, capitalism. But also another thing that I see is the aggressive anti-intellectualism in the Black community. When I first heard about the Ice Cube's contract with Black America, I thought the way he went about getting it out to the people was kind of goofy. But I went to his website that he set up. I went to icecube.com and there's a link to the contract with Black America, and I printed it out and I read it. And I took issue with it. And I shared my issues with it with people around me, talked to my wife about it, talked to my brothers and homies and co-conspirators about it. And I shared my thoughts about it on my blog. And one of the most common responses I got from people who support the contract was that they told me I wasn't even worthy to speak on it. I couldn't even have thoughts about this. That is peasant behavior. Like, it was literally in the feudal Europe, it was forbidden for you to even have negative thoughts about the king. You were unworthy to even think about such things. In the old Christian church, even prior to the Protestant Reformation, it was said that the 98% of all Christians, if you weren't a nobleman or a member of the clergy, you didn't even need to read the Bible. You were unworthy to read and interpret the Bible. You just had to accept whatever interpretation your authorities, the noblemen and the clergy, gave to you. And then in the time of mass literacy, it was thought that philosophy, contemplation, critique, academic pursuits were no longer just a peer view of the noblemen and the clergy. And when I say noblemen and clergy, I meant only men. But mass literacy would bring about mass philosophy, where they would say you would have the gentleman farmer or the worker philosopher, where the people who are of the lower classes could engage in not just thinking about higher minded endeavors, but can express their thoughts, and even through democracy, rule of the people, through engaging in politics, could even work with others to have their views implemented or their ideas implemented within the structure of society. There was a time where only the wealthy and only the elites, people of high-born status, were allowed to say, well, I think this should happen. And sometimes you would get a benevolent ruler, sometimes you would get a tyrannical ruler, but it doesn't matter. Whatever ruler and whatever ideas that ruler has, those are the ideas that you should live with. And you would tell yourself as a peasant, as a slave, I'll toil to my grave, but on the sweet by and by, on the other side, there will be honey in heaven, or milk and honey, gross, streets paved with gold. And that's how much of humanity existed under the time of tyrants and European expansionism and things. But in this time, we have people that have that same mentality. If you don't have a certain amount of fame, a certain amount of money, you're unworthy. How dare you question the Godhead, the nobleman, the monarch, the elite? How dare you a lowborn man of low status. Use your own brain to draw your own conclusions. And then after you draw your own conclusions, how dare you articulate or express your views or your critique or your understanding? How dare you? I'm like, oh Lord, we got black peasants out here. Peasant mentality. And they're proud and aggressive about it. And people would tell me I'm unworthy to question Ice Cube. Hell. And I heard that somebody told me, how dare you talk about Obama? And a lot of y'all making fun of these MAGA folks. A lot of y'all dissing this MAGA folks. But go back and review some things y'all were saying when Obama was president. Don't quit. You better respect our president. I say yes. I respect anyone who is respectable. I ain't gonna respect you because of your title, because of your job description. I'm not even gonna respect you because of whatever degrees you have. It depends. How do you apply that degree, that skill, that status, or the word y'all love so much that I hate so much, that privilege? Ain't no such thing. When you just love somebody for the sake of loving or following or bow to somebody for the sake of bowing, that is not really respect. Because respect, when you break that word apart, it means to look again. Spect means to see. Spectacle. Spectate. Spectacular. Spect means to see something for what, to see clearly, to see through. Means to repeat, reevaluate. It means to again, to do over, to repeat. So when you respect something, that means you have looked at it, you have examined it, and you comprehend it to the fullest. In the purest sense of that word, it doesn't mean you can respect your enemies. You see it all the time. If you read military journals or read biographies of military men, Norman Schwarzkopf, General MacArthur, he was like, yeah, this man was my enemy. If I saw this man, I'd shoot him dead. I sent dozens of men to their death. This man killed my whole platoon, but I respect them. See, people, oh yeah, we went to the jungles of Vietnam. Read about how they respected Ho Chi Minh, or respected, CIA agents who were trying to assassinate this world leader, like Omar Torrijos. You read Confessions of an Economic Hitman, and you talk about how much respect they had for the very foreign socialist and revolutionary leaders that they murdered, but they respected them. And what a respect is, now there in the modern connotation of the word, it is somewhat having awe or reverence or some type of positive connotation, but it also means I understood this guy. I knew where he stood. I knew where he was coming from. So you can't respect something that you don't comprehend, and you can't comprehend something that you don't review, that you don't critique, that you don't dissect and break down. So you people who claim you respect Ice Cube and these other Negro leaders, that you refuse to critique, that you refuse to hold up to a standard, that you refuse to hold accountable, that's not respect. That's groveling. That's being a hoe. And I'm using Ice Cube's terminology. Y'all such big fans of Ice Cube. You a mark-ass trick. So yes, I respect Ice Cube. How could it not be respect for me to go and read and review and critique and dissect? I mean, if people did that to the things I say and the things I've written, I don't care if you agree with me or not. I consider that respect. People get on my feeds. They send me anonymous and public messages talking about, you did this, you did that, when you were working with the National Black United Front, and then your little restaurant and your kids, they know everything about me and they hate me. That's mad respect. Even if you hate me, that's looking again and again. So anyway, I decided that since people, and that's one thing people say, I was unworthy to have an opinion. I ain't got money. I ain't got fame. I ain't been able to go sit on Donald Trump's lap and tell him my Christmas wish list like Ice Cube did. What I want for my people, I ain't been able to go sit at the foot of a powerful white man and tell him my desires and things I want for my people. So how dare Cube is too high up on the hall. That's a house Negro. Cube is a house Negro. And if you don't believe me, because he says cuss words and he acts real tough and he talked about the white man and made a song called Cave Bitch, you think he ain't a house Negro? Go look up on my YouTube. Subscribe to my YouTube while you're at it. What I said a house Negro was, and then you can respect me by saying, well, your analysis of what a house Negro is or isn't. But anyway, let me move on. But yeah, Ice Cube is a house. So is who else y'all like? Obama's a house Negro. Anyway, so I decided the second thing people would say to me is, bro, Diallo, what are you gonna do? If you don't like what Ice Cube did, why don't you come up with your own plan? And I'm like, what you think I've been doing the last 20 years? I've been spitting plans out. But you know, and they'd be like, well, you should be a leader. If you don't like it, you should be a leader. Now, and my idea is, I don't think self-appointed leaders, or no self-appointed leader is a legitimate leader. Anybody who made themselves a leader is illegitimate. I think legitimate leadership comes from being selected, erected by the people. And the moment you violate that, then you're not you're a demagogue, you're a dictator, you're a con man. But you can only true leadership in the Black community, according to Black culture, is a byproduct of the people appointing you. And I ain't saying all Black people got to appoint you. It could be right now, tomorrow, 5 Black people can make me the leader of whatever we got going on. But I can't just jump up like Ice Cube and a lot of other Black people who don't respect our community and say, I'm a leader. Now listen to me. This is what Black people need, want, and should do. And it is the height of disrespect for Ice Cube to submit his agenda to Trump before we even got to see it. We had to hear about it from Trump Jr. and Eric Trump. But I decided, since Black people, number one, say I'm unworthy to speak on it, and other Black people was like, I'm not worthy to critique him, and that since I don't like Ice Cube, what would I do? I decided to say what my solutions would be for the Black community. And if you want to hear my breakdown and critique, and this isn't just Ice Cube, he's just the latest hustler. He's just the latest con man to come with this. Diddy with his vote or die, the ADOS movement. There's been a lot of what I call prosperity politics. Black people who tell Black folks that politics is about getting some money to consume white products, as opposed to politics being about liberating our people and liberating the land. Politics is about liberation, not getting a payday. Politics is about, the Black politics need to be about liberating, creating Black institutions, not creating opportunities for more Black hyper consumerism. But I know that's going to piss some people off. No, you against money? I never said I was against money. And instead of challenging what I actually said, they do the straw man, and they erect an argument that I didn't make and fight against, and attribute that argument to me, and they fight against it. Fallacious ass. Okay. If I ruled the world, if I was the Black leader, if I could do gangster raps and make goofy movies, stereotype movies like Ice Cube, and I was in that status of a Black leader, the first thing I would do is I would define the problems, and I would prioritize those problems. Because a lot of times people offer solutions without really giving the problems. And if you offer a cure for a disease you fail to diagnose, you can often make the issue worse. So if somebody comes into me and say, my stomach hurts, and I just grab any type of indigestion pill and give it to them and send them home, I've given them a cure for their problem, but I haven't properly diagnosed. What could cause a hurt stomach? If it's a woman, she could have an ectopic pregnancy. If it's a man or a woman, they could have a perforated bowel or an obstruction in their colon, or just a blockage of gas. It could be anything from a life-threatening issue to a minor issue that will resolve itself. So you can acknowledge, hey, there's a problem, but you have to be more specific in diagnosing what is the particular problem before you implement a cure. And many of our leaders give us false diagnoses. Some cult leaders will tell us that our problem is supernatural or spiritual. The black man has walked away from Islam and God's will. Or the black man has broke the covenant with God, the Hebrew Israelites tell us. We broke our covenant with God because we're the chosen people. Or we were original Muslims and we came to America and got caught up in the white devil's religion, and we have to return so that Allah will bring down his judgment. Some people say we walk in the light of Christ, and Christ will not impose more on us than we can bear. And as we walk with the Lord, our rewards will come in heaven. So a lot of our religious leaders or spiritual leaders, who often overlap as political leaders, when I think any type person who is a spiritual or religious leader should be invalidated for political material world leadership. You can't guide me to the by and by and guide us here. Pick a side. If you're going to march the legions into the heavens, the holy host, then fine. Godspeed. But you can't, be a material world leader, and even God told y'all that. So don't be mad at me for saying any religious leader should be ineligible for political or organizational leadership. Wow, this shadow. The lighting here, what do you want from me? The sun comes up during the day. So, anyway, I digress. Problems. You have to call out what the problems. And I'm going to list the major problems that plague Black people. And a lot of our hustler leaders that don't say that our problems are essentially supernatural, they say that our problems are purely monetary. If Black people could just get reparations checked, if Black people could just open more businesses, if Black people could just bank more with Black folks, if Black people could buy Black. And then for all Black people who thinks that financial inflation, getting more money, is the path to freedom, there's this historical event. We've had them here too. Black Wall Street. If y'all didn't learn nothing from Black Wall Street about the quote unquote value of having Black businesses and money, I'm not saying Black business and Black dollars aren't important, but we can't deflate or distort what it means. Money is not freedom. Money, fiat money especially, it's just a placeholder. It's a medium of exchange. It is not a means to freedom. I mean, go look up Kristallnacht, where the poor people of Germany went up and down the Jewish business rolls in the early stages of the rise of the Third Reich and busted out all the windows of all the Jewish businesses. Go look at all the, but I continue to digress. I'm running out of time. I'm gonna have to do a part 2 to this anyway. So let me at least get through the problems before the end of the show. Global warming and destruction of the ecosphere is the number one problem facing Black people. And I know a lot of our demagogues, a lot of our hustler leaders, misleaders, don't like to deal with anything outside of race specific stuff because they want to keep Black people in a box, in a bubble. They don't want Black people thinking about broader issues because a lot of times they're not educated on those issues, our so-called Black leaders. And a lot of times it will cause Black people to look beyond the petty goals of our appointed and anointed Black leaders that just want to keep us hustling for a seat at the table or a few extra crumbs from the oppressor's economy. But the number one problem facing the Black race is ecocide, global warming, the destruction and collapse of biodiversity. Why? Because that is destroying the life-sustaining capacity of the earth. And if you destroy the life-sustaining capacity of the earth, nothing else is relevant. You can have all the freedom in the world you want. But if there's no air to breathe, if the soil is not viable for growing food, If the water is too contaminated to drink, then what are you free on? Who to be a free man on a dead planet? What the hell does that mean? So every black person that's serious about the well-being, the liberation, the advancement, the development of oppressed African people that doesn't have an ecological component to their struggle is only trying to make black people's race to extinction more comfortable. They're not trying to prevent it. They want black people to go to extinction owning more businesses or having more banks, so that when some alien civilization comes from another planet to see this dead husk of a rock floating in space, the alien archaeologists can look and be like, well, there was a population here that had some banks. You know, what the blood clot? It's crazy to me. It's literal mass psychosis that we're living on a planet that's being killed, that we know it's being killed. The life-sustaining capacity of the earth is being undermined as we speak. Every year it gets worse. And we got black people so sick they acting like white folks. Oh, there are economic opportunities. The polar ice caps are melting. That means invest in oil. They're going to start privatizing water. Go to Wall Street and buy stock in water. Buy gold bars. There's going to be societal collapse. So if you get, as fiat currencies start to collapse, buy gold. And they keep making all these smart quote unquote money moves. What the hell are you going to do with a gold on a dead planet? I ain't saying don't get money. I'm saying prioritize and use whatever money, talent, and resources you have to contribute to undermining the systems that are destroying the ecosystems. Number one problem. And any black person that tells you any other, well, the number one problem, let me jump around this list. The number one problem for black people, because I guess I got to talk about some black specific stuff. Because I know global warming is black, not black specific. So the number one problem overall is destruction of biodiversity, contamination of ecosystems, global warming, carbon emissions, climate disruption. Number one problem for everyone in the world. Number one, that should be a component of every black. But the number one problem for African people is menticide, the systematic and deliberate destruction of our minds, our capacity to think critically and to construct movements and construct agendas based on what our minds are able to construct. We are told that morality comes from religion or from God or belief system. Morality is a human construct. The way the world functions as far as human societies is a human construct that is dependent on the minds of our people. So menticide prevents us from evaluating the problems, constructing viable solutions to our problems, and then working together long enough, coordinating our actions and resources long enough to execute that. So global warming is a horrendous problem, but menticide prevents us from acknowledging that and understanding that and constructing a rational path to reversing it. So that's black specific problem. Another big problem are the nuclear weapons and nuclear proliferation. Right now, the European powers, with a few exceptions, Pakistan, India, it used to be South Africa used to have a nuclear bomb, but Mandela turned that over to his white masters. That punk. Old Nelly Mandela sold out a whole race of people, a whole nation of people. But nuclear non-proliferation, destruction of the nuclear arsenal is a major problem. In the 80s, when I first became active in the early 90s, that was a big issue that people understood, but it was still in the latter stages of the Cold War. The United States is still at the hair trigger ready. And then people started talking in the early stages of the Trump presidency when he was talking about nuking people. But I don't know why the whole world is not up in arms when a few people have the capacity to kill every person and contaminate every inch of this planet in under 5 minutes. So global warming, nuclear weapon proliferation in existence, dismantling the nuclear arsenal should be a major problem for anybody who's seeking justice and abundance in life. So another black specific problem is oppression. The state of oppression, which is different than racism. You can be oppressed outside of racism. But racism and oppression are all but synonymous because our oppression now is racial based. But there have been gender-based oppression, and there still is, but there's different manifestations. But we can define oppression or really understand oppression is when all of the systems and institutions necessary for a group's survival and to perpetuate that group are under the control of an outside hostile force. That's what oppression is. That's really slavery, actually. When all of the systems and institutions that we require for our life are under the control of our enemies, you are in a state of oppression. So your job under oppression is to dismantle those systems and institutions and erect systems and institutions that you control, or capture those institutions and repurpose them for your people's interests. After that, and all these problems stem one from the other. Resource over exploitation. Again, there was a lot of talk about peak resources and the ongoing resource war. Everything from land that can be farmed, to water that can be consumed, to oil, even helium. The world is starting to run out of helium. So resources of the planet are mismanaged. The resources are not used for the service. People, resources have been commodified to generate profits, not utilized and managed for the well-being and health of the society and ecosystem. So resource exploitation and resource commodification, a major problem. And these things don't even come up on Black radar. Black people want a couple of banks and some money, some fiat money, in a collapsing system, in a collapsing empire that has a backwards death economy. And we've distilled our objectives down as a people, the people who govern, who created civilization. The best we can do is get some extra fiat from our oppressive civilization. But I digress. Imperialism and neocolonialism, for the European nations to be able to project their military might and impose their agendas onto non-European nations. And when I was working on the mayoral campaign, I was advising and doing policy development for, because I wanted to, again, in politics, I was trying to upset the status quo. So there was this upstart candidate for mayor who was outside of the machine. And when I was working on his candidacy, Representative Ford, to become the next mayor of Chicago, I told him that his policy slogan should be decolonize Chicago, because you can colonize foreign nations, but you can also colonize communities. And basically a colony is a population or geographical region that is governed from the outside or governed by outsiders. And those people within that geographical space cannot control what comes out of or what comes into their geographical space. So in colonial Africa, they would come to Africa and extract gold, or they go to Africa now, they extract coltan, they take the coltan to Asia and manufacture phones, and they take the phones back to Africa and sell them at a great markup, and all the profit goes to. So what comes into the continent of Africa and what exits the continent of Africa, the resources that come out and the manufactured products that return, the Africans have little to no say in. That is a neo-colonial or a traditional colonial situation, depending on the government structure. And the same thing in the Black community. Every day, thousands of non-Black people wake up in non-Black communities and jump in their luxury cars and drive into the Black community, set up shop, extract resources. Then they get in those luxury cars and leave the Black community with bags full of money, more or less. You know, it's done digitally, so they don't have bags of money. They have terabytes of digital cash, whatever. So we have to end imperialism, colonialism. We have to end Capitalism. Capitalism does not create wealth, it concentrates wealth. Collective labor, socialism creates wealth, capitalism concentrates that wealth. We have to end capitalism. We cannot thrive in capitalism. Black capitalism solves nothing. It literally takes capitalism and it's blackface. Mammy, it's blackface. Oppression is no better. In fact, blackface oppression is more disgusting than white folks' oppression. Obama out here committing atrocities against Africa is worse than a white president doing it because he comes from us. And we both, I don't know where y'all was raised, but your brother stabbing you in the back is worse than your enemy stabbing you in the back, because your brother is somebody you feel personal, you take personal, somebody you're going to inherently trust. So Obama's treason hit different than Biden's treason is going to hit. But I digress. But I have to speed up. Religion and cultism is another major problem that y'all get mad at me because y'all believe we are a spiritual people. We are not a spiritual people. We are a biological people. We were not created, we evolved. And I know this makes y'all mad, and I know y'all got this fallacy that atheism is Eurocentric, and I don't even advocate for atheism. I'm not going to tell you not to believe in whatever delusional nonsense you want to believe in about the origins of humanity and about the fate. But I say this, the organizations that we construct and the systems that we execute and the agendas that we hold to must be secular. Let's follow what Malcolm X. It took Malcolm X a little too long to figure this out because he was a cult member. But Malcolm X said, keep your religion in your closet. That's when Malcolm X became a real threat to his enemies, when he became secular. Not when he said the white man was the devil, not when he told black people to carry guns, not when he said that America is going to be doomed and the wrath of Allah is going to rain fire on America. He became a threat when he became two things, secular and Pan-Africanist. And all of our organizations must be secular and Pan-Africanist. But you can believe what you want. I will work with a Muslim. You can go to the mosque and bump your head on the floor all day. And when it comes to me and you're ready to work, I'll do it. You can go to your tabernacle and dance on your tippy toes with your elbows sticking out behind your back and speak in tongues all day. But when it comes time to the community, and I can sit at home and think rationally and contemplate the future of my people, but when it comes together to do whatever solutions we're going to implement, it has to be secular. You know, and even y'all, let me not leave y'all, you can pour libations and call down the ancestors and take them cowrie shells and toss them on your shrine, whatever. I will respect that. But our formation, don't come and tell me our solution rests in any of that, unless you got some peer-reviewed, concrete, evidentiary evidence. But anyway, we're not going to get to solution. This is Bro Diallo Show, Q4 Radio. You can find me at q4.org. I'm going to be broadcasting from the bunker. I need to get a black Scully like Ice Cube. I'm already working on the beard, and I'll sit up here like Ice Cube, all tuned up, acting tough from his multi-millionaire mansion, trying to act like he's one of us. He was a fake gangster, and now he's a fake political leader. But I digress. We're going to talk about solutions. I defined the problems. There's some other problems here, but I think I got through the major problems. I'm running out of time. So the next Bro Diallo broadcast, we're going to talk about specific solutions. And I don't mean grand solutions. I hate when people's like, well, black people must unify. What the hell does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. We must unify. We need our own businesses. What type of businesses? Butter churning businesses? Do you know how many businesses become obsolete? How many services that people once paid for and got one way and got another way? So what type of businesses? What will be the structure of those businesses? How will those businesses be financed? According to Ice Cube, Trump was going to give us the money to finance businesses, but that might be off the table. But I'm going to talk about grassroots solutions, meaning things we can do with our level of consciousness, our level of unity, and the amount of resources we have today, things we can start implementing solutions without the white man giving us a dime, giving us his consent, or giving us even his acknowledgement. What we can do amongst ourselves. And when I say amongst ourselves, it don't even involve all black people. Just the black people who will say, who can look in the mirror and say, me, myself, and I want to make a positive contribution to the just aspirations of my people. Black people who have that idea and who have that disposition, what we can do. And I don't care if it's 100 of you in your community or just 2 of you. I'm going to give you viable grassroots solutions that don't require an act of Congress, don't require a favorable policies from the president. Now, if those things come, take it. One of my favorite quotes from Wise Intelligence, my favorite MC in the world, Wise Intelligence. He said, I ain't turning down nothing but my collar. So any resources, if they want to send us tokens of their appreciation for putting those demonic Dems in office, take it. Don't turn down nothing. But you also have to say, what do I have to do in return? Is what I have to give my oppressor going to be of greater value than what I get from it? So make sure you get a positive rate of return. Y'all like that technical economic language. Makes us feel like we part of this wretched omnicidal economy. But anyway, bro Diallo. Show. I'm exiting. I'm going to leave us with Foundation. If they could, they would. Bro Diallo Show, Q4 Radio. I will be back Monday with If I Ruled the World Part 2. I defined what the problems are. And anybody that comes to you with solutions and they haven't given you a breakdown of what specific problems, or if their problems are fake, the spirit, I'm going to solve the spiritual death of Black people. Our problem is not our spiritual death. And our solution is not a spiritual awakening. Our problem is not lack of money. And I know everybody's about to log off now. Black folks' problems is not lack of money. Dale Jones said we were richer than the people who enslaved us. Listen to that. We had more wealth than the people who enslaved us. So if money was freedom, we would have never been enslaved. I'm not saying money is a tool, a very useful and even maybe in some instances an extremely necessary tool, but it is just that. Money is not the be all end all. How do I know? Ask the Black people in the many affluent Black townships that were burned to a crisp by illiterate rednecks. Ask the wealthy Jews in Poland, in Krakow, in Berlin during the rise of the Third Reich. Ask all these recess, Haiti, which is the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere, according to white folks, was the wealthiest colony under the British Empire, under the French Empire. I know some bunch of nerds about to get on. British, you said Haiti was British. The French Empire. So money is not freedom. Money is a resource. Money is a mythology. We could all wake up tomorrow and the US dollar could be worth less than a peso. It is fiction. But liberation, autonomy, sovereignty, that's real. Anyway, and go find the people who earned their way to freedom, who bought their way to power. When the white folks came to the United States, they took over by opening businesses that outcompeted the Native American businesses. Like, what? That's how you get power and take over a land? Anyway, I digress. I'm already over my time, so I'm about to get in trouble. Please tune in. Subscribe to the YouTube. Share, like, subscribe. Come on, share this. Shout out to my Patreon. Shout out to Delta Star Marketing. Shout out to my co-conspirator, Chauncey. Happy birthday to King Dita. His birthday was a couple of days ago. So was my birthday was on the 7th. Today's the 9th. My birthday was a couple of days ago. I got me a Lego City set and some peanut butter chocolate chip cookies for my birthday. Shout out to my wife and children. We got lit up in here. And I think that's it. I'll see y'all next Monday. Bro Diallo Show, Q4 Radio. This is Foundation. If they could, they would. If they could, they would.